Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is the 26th of July.
I don't think
2019.
And I stop, Michelle. I'm actually seriously stopping. I'm breaking in because I don't think I've ever been more excited to do a show in a long time. So the left are the real racists, by the way, just in case you didn't know.
But thanks for taking the time, Bet, to point out that black men support Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you did. Well done.
Exactly. All right. So I'm gonna kind of do something reverse because I want you to. I watched it the other way, but I want you to see Trump's reaction first, and then we're gonna go into something. Oh, there we go.
Republican Party, our country. There was no defense of what Robert Mueller was trying to defend. In all fairness to Robert Mueller, whether his performance was a bad one or a good one, I think everybody understands that. I think everybody understands what's going on. There was no defense to this ridiculous hoax, this witch hunt that's been going on for a long time. Pretty much from the time I came down on the escalator with our First Lady. And it's a disgrace what happened. But I think today proved a lot to everybody. In fact, some of my biggest opponents wrote things today that I wouldn't have believed they would have written, and I appreciate that they did that. This has been a very bad thing for our country. And despite everything we've been through, it's been an incredible 2.5 years for our country. The administration, our president, me, we've done a great job. We've got the strongest stock market, the best unemployment numbers, the most number of people ever working in the history of our country right now, almost 160 million. Our military has been rebuilt and getting even stronger. We've done a great job, and we've done it under this terrible phony cloud, that's all it was. And they should be ashamed of themselves, absolutely ashamed. And you know who knew it was a phony cloud more than anyone else? Was Schiff and Nadler and Schumer and Pelosi, every one of them. They all knew it was phony stuff. And you look at the polls are showing it maybe more than anybody else or anything else. And I've had my best polls, and I don't say why, but people see what's gone on in our country with this whole thing. I've been going through it for 3 years. All nonsense. So this was a very big day for our country. This was a very big day for the Republican Party. And you could say it was a great day for me, but I don't even like to say that. It's great. I'll tell you what, I very much appreciate those incredible warriors that you watched today on television, Republicans, that defended something and defended something very powerful, very important, because like they were really defending our country. More than anything else, they were defending our country. But they were warriors, and they've been warriors for a long time. The Democrats lost so big today. Their party is in shambles right now. They've got the squad leading their party. They are a mess. Where even you take a look at Scribe, and you take a look at so many of the people that were the most outspoken, and they say this was a devastating day for the Democrats. And you know it, John, and everybody else knows it. This was a devastating day for the Democrats. We were, if you take a look at not only the report, beyond the report, take a look at not what he said, but what he was forced to say. And even your networks and your network and your network and every one of these networks, they put up their hands. You know, we had a couple of cases actually we had about 6 cases where they asked our people, our representatives, television networks, please don't come in tonight. We're not going to be doing much on it. And the reason they're not, because it's over. Go ahead.
She's asked if you can be sued.
So WikiLeaks is a hoax just like everything else. And all of those problems having to do with crime were the biggest hoax of all. It was a witch hunt. A total witch hunt. And when you saw Robert Mueller's statement, the earlier statement, and then he did a recap, he did a correction later on in the afternoon. And you know what that correction was? And you still ask the question. You know why? Because you're fake news. And you're one of the most. And let me just tell you, the fact that you even asked that question, you're fake news. Because you know what? He totally corrected himself in the afternoon, and you know that just as well as anybody. Caitlin. I don't know whose answers weren't. I guess his answers weren't, because if you look, the whole report, you take a look at what they did. Some of the things that he didn't even know about. Some of the things he didn't even know what was going on. But you know, in the end, what he did, he actually probably came through for himself. The performance was obviously not very good. He had a lot of problems. But what he showed more than anything else is that this whole thing has been 3 years of embarrassment and waste of time for our country.
Wow, and that's so true. And we're like, Leah's going to show you different clips, but I wanted to get to some of the comments because we haven't been doing comments in a while here. But when I had asked who had watched it, Mr. Red said he did. Lancer said I watched it. Tom says I haven't watched it. He's been preoccupied with Great Britain, Boris Johnson, and Brexit this week. Sorry, Americans. We will get to that on Sunday. Yeah. Gonzalez says I watched. I saw clips on Twitter. Maia did not watch it. Stuart the Brit says I watched Mueller, like watching paint dry. And so I'm so happy that some of you were
I'm going to start out with the most epic
this.
one here. I'm going to sneeze first.
You think Jim Jordan's was the most epic? Yeah, it was pretty good.
Jim Jordan for president. After I watched this, he literally laid down the case for why this is a witch hunt.
I would love to see that happen. I would love
so I hope that we
that
can see him big because he's got a big personality. I couldn't believe what I was watching when I watched it, because his answers, even the Democrats couldn't get him to answer anything, and they were just like trying to be like, hey, you're our star player, you're our witness, and they were embarrassed. Okay. 2.2 million views on this Jim Jordan clip.
They should never have had him come, and they're all regretting it, and it's so great.
Joseph Mifsud on February 10th, 2017. In that interview, Mr. Mifsud lied. You point this out on page 193, volume 1. Mifsud denied. Mifsud also falsely stated. In addition, Mifsud omitted. 3 times he lied to the FBI, yet you didn't charge him with the crime.
Excuse me, did you say one? I'm sorry, did you say 193?
Volume 1, 193. He lied 3 times, you pointed out in the report. Why didn't you charge him with the crime?
I can't get into internal deliberations with regard who would or would not be.
Charge a lot of other people for making false statements. Let's remember this. Let's remember this.
Here it comes.
In 2016, the FBI did something they probably haven't done before. They spied on 2 American citizens associated with a presidential campaign, George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. With Carter Page, they went to the FISA court. They used the now famous dossier as part of the reason they were able to...
So I want to stop this right here because Jim Jordan, he breaks this down a lot on Fox News or whatever, but it's very convoluted and it's very confusing because what they did was corrupt. It was wrong. And they tried to do it under the table and tried not to get caught.
Right.
And Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan and, you know, even Mark Meadows and a lot of these people have spent countless hours trying to untangle this mess. I have goosebumps because what happened during this testimony was all that time of trying to untangle the mess, all the time of telling people, well, I've seen some documents, but I can't tell you, or I've seen this, but I can't talk about this, or we've heard this, and all these different, like, blah, blah, blah. We were just like, okay, get to the punchline. What we saw here from all the Representative Radcliffe, what we saw from these men who spent hours studying this, was that this was their punchlines. Yeah. Okay?
Get the warrant and spy on Carter Page for a better part of a year. With Mr. Papadopoulos, they didn't go to the court. They used human sources. All kinds of, from about the moment Papadopoulos joins the Trump campaign, you got all these people all around the world starting to swirl around him. Names like Hal Downer, Milford, Thompson, meeting in Rome, London, all kinds of places.
I have you hardlined in, so anything
even sent a lady posing as somebody else, went by the name Azra Turk, even dispatched her to London to spy on Mr. Papadopoulos.
This was our government.
In one of these meetings, Mr. Papadopoulos is talking to a foreign diplomat, and he tells the diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. That diplomat then contacts the FBI, and the FBI opens an investigation based on that fact. You point this out on page 1 of the report. July 31st, 2016, they open the investigation based on that piece of information. Diplomat tells Papadopoulos, Russians have dirt, Papadopoulos tells the diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. Diplomat tells the FBI. What I'm wondering is, who told Papadopoulos? How'd he find out?
I can't get into the evidentiary
Yes, you can, because you wrote about it. You gave us the answer. Page 192 of the report, you tell us who told him. Joseph Milford. Joseph Milford's
the fact that he had to look down at his report. He has to know what all is in his report, but he didn't write the report. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. This man didn't write it. I believe he didn't even read it.
So what I love is I saw a meme that had Mueller, and he was looking at his report, and it said, when your mommy read your book and did your book report, and then your teacher asks you about it.
Guy who told Papadopoulos, the mysterious professor who lives in Rome and London, teaches in 2 different universities. This is the guy who told Papadopoulos. He's the guy who starts it all. And when the FBI interviews him, he lies 3 times, and yet you don't charge him with a crime. You charge Rick Gates for false statements. You charge Paul Manafort for false statements. You charge Michael Cohen with false statements. You charge Michael Flynn, a 3-star general, with false statements. But the guy who puts the country through this whole saga, starts it all for 3 years we've lived this now, he lies, and you guys don't charge him. And I'm curious as to why.
Well, I can't get into it, and it's obvious, I think, that we can't get into charging decisions.
When the FBI interviewed him in February, FBI interviews him in February, when the special counsel's office interviewed Milford, did he lie to you guys?
Can't get into that.
Did you interview Milford?
Can't get into that.
Is Milford Western intelligence or Russian intelligence?
Can't get into that.
A lot of things you can't get into.
He's
What's
like
interesting, you can charge 13
actually,
Russians
I can't get
no one's
into
ever
that
heard
stuff.
of, no one's ever seen, no one's ever going to hear of them, no one's ever going to see them. You can charge them. You can charge all kinds of people who are around the president with false statements. But the guy who launches the guy who puts this whole story in motion, you can't charge him. I think that's amazing.
I'm not certain I agree with your characterizations.
Well, I'm reading from your report. Milford told Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos tells the diplomat tells the FBI opens the investigation July 31st, 2016, and here we are 3 years later, July of 2019, the country's been put through this, and the central figure who launches it all lies to us, and you guys don't hunt him down and interview him again, and you don't charge him with a crime. Now, here's the good news. Here's the good news.
Here it comes, wait.
The president was falsely accused of conspiracy. The FBI does a 10-month investigation, and James Comey, when we deposed him a year ago, told us at that point they had nothing. You do a 22-month investigation. At the end of that 22 months, you find no conspiracy. And what's the Democrats want to do? They want to keep investigating. They want to keep going. Maybe a better course of action is to figure out how the false accusation started. Maybe it's to go back and actually figure out why Joseph Milford was lying to the FBI. And here's the good news.
Here it comes.
Here's the good news.
I love it.
That's exactly what Bill Barr's doing. And thank goodness for that. That's exactly what the Attorney General and John Durham are doing. They're going to find out why we went through this three-year saga and get to the bottom of it.
Oh my gosh, Jim Jordan
so
is awesome.
I want to break that down just a little bit for you to understand. The FBI and the CIA, too, they sent these people to try to entrap Papadopoulos all over the world. They were assets of the FBI. And supposedly a diplomat who's working with our government somehow was a honeypot for Papadopoulos. But they also, who's Joseph Milford? who told Papadopoulos the first time. It's in the report that Joseph Misfit told Papadopoulos that the Russians had dirt on Clinton. It was planted there, and you'll see that Mueller says it was not my purview to investigate anything that had to do with Trump, with Russia, that wasn't connected to Trump as well. So if it was connected to Russia and the Clintons, not my purview. He was actually not charged with being able to just go look at Russian interference in Trump. He was to look at Russian interference.
But he literally was under the table. That's what he was charged.
Molly Henwood says Mueller doesn't seem remotely familiar with his report or his investigation or even his own recent statements and letters. He also appears to have contradicted himself repeatedly on the OLC opinion issue, which is not a minor one. So this is Steve Shabbat from our representative.
But we also have Jim Jordan representing not our district, but just Ohio for us. So we got a lot of good guys.
Stephen Crowder says, high school flashback, when you didn't read the assignment and the teacher asks you a question.
When discussing the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting, you referenced, quote, the firm that produced Steele reporting, unquote. The name of that firm was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
And you're on page 103?
103, that's correct, volume 2. When you talk about the firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not familiar with that.
Stop the presses. Stop everything.
I think Tucker Carlson said it best when he said, how come every household in America is more familiar with Fusion GPS than the guy that was investigating it?
I can't even, we have to stop here right now. Mueller was charged with investigating this Trump-Russia connection. The Pfizer report was based on the dossier. And I know all this stuff. He's the guy in charge of investigating all of this.
That's what makes me think he has to be playing stupid, because he does know this stuff. I think he's playing dumb.
Well, let me just help. It's not a trick question. It was Fusion GPS. Now, Fusion GPS produced the opposition research document widely known as the Steele dossier, and the owner of Fusion GPA was someone named Glenn Simpson. Are you familiar with?
This is outside my purview.
Okay. When discussing the June 2000...
That's outside my purview.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. See, again I think he's playing stupid, because it's like this. I think he was told, listen, you have to go and testify. He did not want to. You have to go and testify. And they said, listen, unless you want to be thrown in jail for the rest of your life, you have a chance to look like a stupid, demented old man who doesn't know anything and very incompetent in your job, or you're going to go to jail. And I think he chose playing stupid and looking stupid. And I think it was probably eating him up inside.
Could you repeat that, please? That went a little fast for me. You can give me the citation. I can look at the citation, and can you repeat the last part of that question? And you're on page 103. I'm not familiar with that. This is outside my purview. It's outside my purview. Outside my purview. I'm not going to get into that. I do not recall. I'm sorry. I did not know that. I can't get into. Well, I can't get into it. Can't get into that. Can't get into that. That's beyond my purview. It's not within my purview. It's not my purview. Pardon me? Can you ask? Who else were you talking about? And the question was, can you remind me which paragraph, exactly which paragraph are you looking at? What was your question? I don't have any knowledge of that occurring. I don't have any knowledge. Are you questioning that? I can't get into the discussions on that.
The scope of influence or concerns of something. Range of experience or thought.
So it's not in his scope of influence or concern to look at Fusion GPS or Glenn Simpson, who worked with Steele to get oh my gosh. I can't even. I'm not even going to go.
He's faking it.
All right, here we go. Here's John Radcliffe.
Can you give me an example other than Donald Trump where the Justice Department determined that an investigated person was not exonerated because their innocence was not conclusively determined?
I cannot, but this is a unique situation.
Okay, well, you can't, time is short, I've got 5 minutes, let's just leave it at you can't find it, because I'll tell you why. It doesn't exist. The special counsel's job, nowhere does it say that you were to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence, or that the special counsel report should determine whether or not to exonerate him. It's not in any of the documents. It's not in your appointment order. It's not in the special counsel regulations. It's not in the OLC opinions. It's not in the Justice Manual, and it's not in the principles of federal prosecution. Nowhere do those words appear together, because respectfully, Director, it was not the special counsel's job to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence or to exonerate him, because the bedrock principle of our justice system is a presumption of innocence. It exists for everyone. Everyone is entitled to it, including sitting presidents. And because there is a presumption of innocence, prosecutors never, ever need to conclusively determine it. Now, Director...
There was more to that was really, really good. And I think that a lot of people misunderstand that. When someone goes to trial, or they are presented before a judge or a jury or whatever, the prosecutor's job, okay, is to prove that they are guilty, but the judge and the jury are the ones that decide whether someone is innocent. And if a prosecutor doesn't have enough evidence to even try to prove that someone is guilty of something, that doesn't mean that they get to say, okay, well, now I'm exonerating you. That's not your job. Your job is to find enough evidence to see if you can present it before other people to exonerate him. It is never a prosecutor's job to exonerate someone.
Right.
Mueller, in your May 29th press conference, and again in your opening remarks this morning, you made it pretty clear you wanted the special counsel report to speak for itself. You said at your press conference that that was the office's final position, and we will not comment on any other conclusions or hypotheticals about the president. Now, you spent the last few hours of your life from Democrats trying to get you to answer all kinds of hypotheticals about the president, and I expect that it may continue for the next few hours of your life. I think you've stayed pretty much true to what your intent and desire was, but I guess regardless of that, the special counsel's office is closed and it has no continuing jurisdiction or authority. So what would be your authority or jurisdiction for adding new conclusions or determinations to the special counsel's written report?
As to the latter, I don't know or expect changes in conclusions that we included in our report.
So to that point, you addressed one of the issues that I needed to, which was from your testimony this morning, which some construed as a change to the written report. You talked about the exchange that you had with Congressman Lieu. I wrote it down a little bit different. I want to ask you about it so that the record's perfectly clear. I recorded that he asked you, quote, the reason you did not indict Donald Trump is because of the OLC opinion stating you cannot indict a sitting president, to which you responded, that is correct. That response is inconsistent. I think you'll agree with your written report. I want to be clear that it is not your intent to change your written report. It is your intent to clarify the record to that.
As I started today, this afternoon, and added either a footnote or an endnote, what I wanted to clarify is the fact that we did not make any determination with regard to culpability in any way. We did not start that process down the road.
Terrific. Thank you for clarifying the record. A stated purpose of your appointment as special counsel was to ensure a full and thorough investigation of the Russian government efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. As part of that full and thorough investigation, what determination did the special counsel office make about whether the Steele dossier was part of the Russian government efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election?
Again, when it comes to Mr. Steele, I defer to the Department of Justice.
Well, first of all, Director, I very much agree with your determination that Russia's efforts were sweeping and systematic. I think it should concern every American. That's why I want to know just how sweeping and systematic those efforts were. I want to find out if Russia interfered with our election by providing false information through sources to Christopher Steele about a Trump conspiracy that you determined didn't exist.
Well, I'm not going to discuss the issues with regard to Mr. Steele. And in terms of a portrayal of the conspiracies, we returned 2 indictments in the computer crimes arena. One GRU and another active measures in which we lay out in excruciating detail what occurred in those 2 rather large conspiracies.
I agree with respect to that, but why this is important is an application and 3 renewal applications were submitted by the United States government to spy or surveil on Trump campaign Carter associate, or Carter Page, and on all 4 occasions, the United States government submitted the Steele dossier as a central piece of evidence with respect to that. Now, the basic premise of the dossier, as you know, was that there was a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, but the special counsel investigation didn't establish any conspiracy, correct?
Well, what I can tell you is that the events that you are characterizing here now is part of another matter that is being handled by the Department of Justice.
So he's copping out because he knows that this is being investigated by Hurwitz and Barr. Yeah. Okay, and but he's doing is saying that, oh, don't worry, Hurwitz and Barr are taking care of that part of it, the part of it where it was Clinton. My job was to go after Trump. Okay, my job was to only search and look at any Trump connections to Russia. Right. And that is what he is saying. That is what he believes. He knows that is against the law. He knows that is not what he was called to do. And I think there must have been another, because that's one section with Mueller. I think this is a...
You can't, time is short. I've got 5 minutes. Let's just leave it at, you can't find it, because I'll tell you why. It doesn't exist.
Here we go. And
the special counsel's job,
okay.
I can't find, and you said doesn't exist anywhere in the department policies, and you used it to write a report. And the very first line of your report, says, and as you read this morning, it authorizes the special counsel to provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by the special counsel. That's the very first word of your report, right?
That's correct.
Here's the problem, Director. The special counsel didn't do that. On volume 1, you did. On volume 2, with respect to potential obstruction of justice, the special counsel made neither a prosecution decision or a declination decision. You made no decision. You told us this morning and in your report that you made no determination. So respectfully, Director, you didn't follow the special counsel regulations. It clearly says, write a confidential report about decisions reached. Nowhere in here does it say, write a report about decisions that weren't reached. You wrote 180 pages. 180 pages about decisions that weren't reached, about potential crimes that weren't charged or decided. And respectfully, by doing that, you managed to violate every principle and the most sacred of traditions about prosecutors not offering extra prosecutorial analysis about potential crimes that aren't charged. So Americans need to know this as they listen to the Democrats and socialists on the other side of the aisle, as they do dramatic readings from this report, that volume 2 of this report was not authorized under the law to be written. It was written to a legal standard that does not exist at the Justice Department. And it was written in violation of every DOJ principle about extra prosecutorial commentary. I agree with the chairman this morning when he said Donald Trump is not above the law. He's not. But he damn sure shouldn't be below the law, which is where volume 2 of this report puts him.
So good.
Boom.
There, I'm Chris Hayes.
So
go,
good.
Ratcliffe,
and
go.
so you can see the fake mainstream media because they called that Representative John Ratcliffe grandstands. Not like, hey, calls out,
oh my gosh.
The fake Russian collusion.
That's crazy.
All right, we got more. We're not done yet.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
It just keeps getting better. There's this. Okay. Are you gonna do that one?
Okay.
Really?
So yeah, here we go. Here's another one. He just looks.
The president committed the crime of obstruction.
This is where Robert Mueller looks and sounds completely confused, even with Jerry Nadler here of the Democrat chairman.
The president committed the crime of obstruction. You could not publicly state that in your report or here today.
Can you repeat the question, sir? You're gonna have to repeat that for me. Can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yeah. Which?
Pardon?
Can you read the last question?
The last question was...
I want to make certain I got it accurate. I'm sorry, could you restate?
The individual is in fact obligated to provide what's being demanded by the regulation or statute, meaning you don't have any wiggle room, right?
I'd have to look more closely at the statute.
Well, I just read it to you.
And what was the question, sir, if I might?
Correct.
And where are you reading from on that?
I'm reading from my question.
Then could you repeat it?
Okay.
Is that correct on the screen?
Can you repeat the question? And now that I have the language on the screen.
Is it correct?
What was the question?
No.
Pardon?
Can you read the last question?
The last question was...
I want to make certain I got it accurate.
Attorney number 2 in the Inspector General's report and Strzok both worked on your team, didn't they?
Pardon me? Can you ask?
They both worked on your team, didn't they?
I know. I heard Strzok. Who else were you talking about?
Attorney number 2 identified in the Inspector General's report.
Okay. And the question was?
Volume 2, page 87 and 88 of your report. True?
I'm sorry. Could you again repeat the question?
It was bad. It just kept going and going. Remember, Donald Trump is 73, Robert Mueller is 74, yet Trump looks and acts like a spring chicken next to doddering Mueller. Imagine what more the relatively indefatigable Trump could have done if he didn't have the Mueller dead weight hanging on his presidency for 2 years. Okay, Robert Mueller refuses to deny his office leaked information to CNN on the raid of Roger Stone's home.
To my point, are you aware of anyone providing information to the media regarding the raid on Roger Stone's home, including CNN?
I'm not going to speak to that.
Okay. Sir, given these examples as well as others, you must have realized that leaks were coming from someone associated with the special counsel's office. What I'd like to ask is,
I do not believe that.
Well, sir, this was your work. You're the only one, your office is the only one who had information regarding this. It had to come from your office.
So it was leaked to CNN that there was going to be a raid. It came from his office.
Right.
And however,
Right.
And there were lots of leaks. The giant sucking sound you hear all over Washington, D.C. is the remaining credibility the corporate media disappearing into a black hole created by Robert Mueller's testimony today. Dinesh D'Souza. Robert Mueller is not familiar with Fusion GPS. I repeat, Robert Mueller does not know anything about Fusion GPS. Is it possible that the Republicans have kidnapped the real Robert Mueller and substituted a mentally retarded lookalike in his place? Okay, here's another pure. This is Matt Gaetz.
This is about the collusion.
With confidence that the Steele dossier was not part of Russia's disinformation campaign?
No, I said it in my opening statement. That part of the building of the case predated me, and by at least 10 months.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Manafort's alleged crimes regarding tax evasion predated you. You had no problem charging them. And matter of fact, this Steele dossier predated the Attorney General, and he didn't have any problem answering the question. When Senator Cornyn asked the Attorney General the exact question I asked you, Director, the Attorney General said, and I'm quoting, "No, I can't state that with confidence." And that's one of the areas I'm reviewing. I'm concerned about it, and I don't think it's entirely speculative. Now, if something is not entirely speculative, then it must have some factual basis, but you identify no factual basis regarding the dossier or the possibility that it was part of the Russia disinformation campaign. Now, Christopher Steele's reporting is referenced in your report. Steele reported to the FBI that senior Russian foreign ministry figures, along with other Russians, told him that there was, and I'm quoting from the Steele dossier, extensive evidence of conspiracy between the Trump campaign team and the Kremlin. So here's my question. Did Russians really tell that to Christopher Steele, or did he just make it all up and was he lying to the FBI?
Let me back up a second if I could and say, as I said earlier, with regard to the Steele, that's beyond my purview.
No, it is exactly your purview, Director Mueller, and here's why. Only one of two things is possible, right? Either Steele made this whole thing up and there were never any Russians telling him of this vast criminal conspiracy that you didn't find, or Russians lied to Steele. Now, if Russians were lying to Steele to undermine our confidence in our duly elected president, that would seem to be precisely your purview, because you stated in your opening that the organizing principle was to fully and thoroughly investigate Russia's interference. But you weren't interested in whether or not Russians were interfering through Christopher Steele. And if Steele was lying, then you should have charged him with lying like you charged a variety of other people, but you say nothing about this in your report.
Well, sir.
Meanwhile, Director, you're quite loquacious on other topics. You write 3,500 words about the June 9 meeting between the Trump campaign and Russian lawyer Veselnitskaya. You write on page 103 of your report that the president's legal team suggested, and I'm quoting from your report, that the meeting might have been a setup by individuals working with the firm that produced the Steele reporting. So I'm going to ask you a very easy question, Director Mueller. On the week of June 9, who did Russian lawyer Veselnitskaya meet with more frequently? The Trump campaign or Glenn Simpson, who is functionally acting as an operative for the Democratic National Committee?
Well, what I think is missing here is the fact that this is under investigation elsewhere in the Justice Department. And if I can finish, sir, and consequently, it's not within my purview. Department of Justice and FBI should be responsive to questions on this particular issue.
It is absurd to suggest that a operative for the Democrats was meeting with this Russian lawyer the day before and the day after the Trump Tower meeting, and yet that's not something you referenced. Now, Glenn Simpson testified under oath. He had dinner with Veselnitskaya the day before and the day after this meeting with the Trump team. Do you have any basis, as you sit here today, to believe that Steele was lying?
As I said before, and I'll say again, it's not my purview. Others are investigating what you
So it's not your purview to look into whether or not Steele's lying. It's not your purview to look into whether or not anti-Trump Russians are lying to Steele. And it's not your purview to look at whether or not Glenn Simpson was meeting with the Russians the day before and the day after you write 3,500 words about the Trump campaign meeting. So I'm wondering how these decisions are guided. I look at the Inspector General's report. I'm citing from page 404 of the Inspector General's report. It states, Page stated, Trump's not ever going to be president, right? Right. Strzok replied, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Also in the Inspector General's report, there's someone identified as attorney number 2. Attorney number 2, this is page 419, replied, hell no, and then added, viva la resistance. Attorney number 2 in the Inspector General's report and Strzok both worked on your team, didn't they?
Pardon me? Can you ask?
They both worked on your team, didn't they?
I know. I heard Strzok. Who else were you talking about?
Attorney number 2 identified in the Inspector General's report.
Okay. And the question was?
Did he work for you? The guy who said viva la resistance.
Peter Strzok worked for me for a period of time, yes.
Yeah, but so did the other guy that said viva la resistance. And here's what I'm kind of noticing, Director Mueller. When people associated with Trump lied, you threw the book at him. When Christopher Steele lied, nothing. And so it seems to be that when Glenn Simpson met with Russians, nothing. When the Trump campaign met with Russians, 3,500 words. And maybe the reason why there are this discrepancies in what you focused on is because the team is so biased.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Pledged to stop Trump.
Jeffries
Wow. Oh my gosh. Matt Gaetz is awesome.
Somebody called the one.
He is just so.
So this is my own post. And by the way, I'm going to just my little commercial break here. So I was at Walmart, and I don't know if you guys know, but Trump is under a lot of scrutiny for saying to Ilhan Omar that she should just go back to Somalia, fix her country, and come back to our country.
And then show us how it's done.
So, and then another woman in a checkout line lied and a hate hoax saying that some guy told her to go back, but really she just had 20 items in a 10-item line. And she made this big long thing about it. So everybody's like making a big long thing about Trump's telling everybody to go back home. Well, I have found that it looks like Walmart is racist as well, because Mueller's testimony showed an old senile man who obviously didn't write the report. But I just left a Walmart and Strzok was right. You could smell the Trump support from Walmart's racist sign telling little kids, look at all the little kids, all the different races, to go back big. And we know that Trump says big and bigly a lot. So this is definitely a Trump sign. It's definitely racist telling all these children to go back.
Right.
Trump's racism is everywhere.
Just in case. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful, blessed Friday evening. Go read my article and share it. Good night, guys.
I was cold.